37th parallel on America's haunted highway, it's Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.
Welcome back, everybody, to Pixelated Paranormal, Season 2, Episode 3. I'm your host, Sean. With me today, it's been about a month since they've been gone, but I've got the human hot air balloon recently deflated, Preston.
What's up?
Preston, how's it going?
It's going good. How's everybody?
Wonderful. Good to have you back. And the Canadian gulag escapee himself, Robert.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it.
How you guys been? It's been like a month. It's almost 4 weeks.
Okay, it's been a month.
Since we were all three together.
It's been a month for the listeners. We're together constantly on the internets and hosting D&D games and everything else. So it's not like we don't talk to each other. It's just you guys we don't talk to.
Right. Yeah, they haven't heard you guys' sweet, succulent voices for almost 4 weeks now.
Well, I'm sure they've heard our voices, just not on this show.
Well, they haven't heard Preston for shit.
Whoa, you gotta calm that down. I think most listeners get confused anyways because I talk, you talk, I talk, you talk, and they're just like, it's like one continuous voice. They don't know. They're just confused on what's going on.
I talk, you talk, Montauk.
Ooh, the pun master is back.
I have heard that.
What's that, Rob?
Oh, I said I've heard that sometimes people can't tell your two voices apart. Also because you guys use the same catchphrases. You'll get used to it.
It doesn't help that we just laughed at the same time either. So, what say you? We just jump straight into the news. How's that for a slice of fried gold?
Sure.
Okay, so I didn't find anything too interesting, although I did come across an article saying, man dies while watching The Conjuring 2. Viewers report ghost following them home from theater. I didn't watch it because I personally think The Conjuring movies are absolutely terrible. Either one of you guys catch the second one or the first one?
I haven't caught the first one.
I haven't watched any of them. They're probably total crap.
They're not... yeah, they're pretty bad. I mean, good on them for trying. But basically, the article says that, I'm going to read this. If you went to see Conjuring 2 in theaters this weekend and survived, you should count yourself lucky. Viewers of James Wan's horror sequel aren't just reporting ghosts following them home from theater, but in some, they are dying during the film's climax. Spoiler alert, guys. If you plan to see this movie, fast forward about 13 seconds. On Tuesday, a 65-year-old man collapsed during the climax of Conjuring 2, during which famed demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren battled the demonic nun, Valak. The man had complained about chest pains earlier in the movie, and during the climactic scene, those chest pains got worse, only to have him lose consciousness in his seat. He was later pronounced dead at the hospital. So, is it a coincidence?
Yes.
Hospital employers are saying that they have no idea what happened to the man's body.
What?
Well, like, how do they not know what happened to the man's body? I mean, is that just like, do they just not perform any test, or is it just like media hype? Is like this is like a bullshit story?
The movie was so scary, he died.
Well, when they say they don't know what happened to his body, like, does that mean his body disappeared?
Or like they brought it in, they're like, we don't know how this man died. I mean, it could have been a heart attack, could have been a stroke. We're idiot doctors, and we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. Sounds to me like a little bit of clickbait there at the end, so the world may never know. So keeping up in our theme of robots, Preston, why don't you just continue to sail that ship for us?
Oh, I will. So, the Department of Homeland Security has commissioned a report forecasting that artificially intelligent robots are just 5 to 10 years away from hitting the mainstream, but there's a catch. These robots will be extremely hackable and programmed to kill you.
That sounds terrible.
Oh, yeah. So everybody's like on this, as far as like marketing goes, like everybody's on this thing right now about like you have self-driving cars, robot workers, all these things to make our life easier. But the way the artificial intelligence is going, that there's going to be this back door where if you're smart enough and you're really good at programming things, that you could go in there and you could rehack these robots and turn them into killers. And before you know it, instead of, delivering your drugs or whatever it is, they're just going to turn around and just, kill the shit out of you. So they say that the robot revolution is coming as early as 2021, and we should be prepared. So what do you guys think? How do you guys feel about this idea that even though we'll have fully automated robots who are artificially intelligent, there's still a good chance that they're going to be hackable to where we could program them to just, do whatever we want?
Well, let's just face it. Number one, sure, they might be able to hack a robot, but what robots we have around right now aren't killer death machines. I mean, they're technically, you could push them over. Now, DARPA, on the other hand, if those fucking things become killer robots, we're fucked, because those things scare the shit out of me, and they probably don't like us already, because, one guy tripped that one motherfucker, and he ain't ever forgot that, and took his box away from him, so, that dude's gonna be the first one to go. Honestly.
What about the last robot we talked about, the little Rob cosplay robot that is trapped in Russia? I mean, somebody could hack that, put an AK-47 on it, and go to town.
Well, I don't think it has fingers to trigger an AK-47. First off, I mean, it barely had a heads-up display. So
Rob, when you have your imagination, anything is possible. They can build like an automated rocket launcher on top of this thing, and you would be screwed.
Yikes. In other news, I think we just kind of wrapped up on the Olympics recently, and it sounds like USA did pretty good. And speaking of Olympics, Rob, you wanted to talk a little bit about the Olympics, but take us back.
Yes. In 1984, the Olympics were held in Los Angeles, California, and it came to my attention, and I can't remember where I read this. It may have been on Phantoms and Monsters, because I get a lot of information there. But the closing ceremony of the 1984 Summer Olympics was quite strange. How old were you guys in 84? Were you guys even born yet?
We were just born in 84.
Okay. So...
Well, what he means is he was. I was born in 85.
Ooh.
So...
Late bloomer.
Sean the fetus, maybe. I don't know. We're talking about August of summer of 1984. I don't know how far along.
I think I was just a wing and a prayer back then.
Okay, so you weren't thought of yet. Now, I looked into the story, and you can find the closing ceremonies online. These strange closing ceremonies. So apparently, it opened up with flashlights being shown, red, white, and blue, or whatever, in the crowd, and they were playing the 2001 Space Odyssey music. And then overhead, they had built a 2-ton UFO, flying saucer, with lights all around it. And Bob Costas, I think, was actually the commentator that was talking about it. He was saying, it's a 2-ton thing. It's powered by, they said it was powered by diesel fuel, and it's floating above the thing. Apparently, looking into the story, supposedly this 2-ton monstrosity with lights, and it even had a light on the bottom that was shining over the crowd and stuff like that. And the thing looks legit. Okay, it looks like a real flying saucer that you would see, the stories and stuff about. Apparently, it was supposed to be hoisted up by 4 helicopters, holding it aloft in the air. And now, I don't know about you, but I don't quite remember 1984 safety standards, but they had this thing hovering over a crowd of thousands of people at the Summer Olympic Stadium. And supposedly hoisted and held by 4 different helicopters. And so it's flying over and shining lights, and they start playing all kinds of sci-fi music. Then they start shooting off lasers in the crowd and stuff like that. But then at the very end, for like the last minute of it, they bring out this smoke. Smoke starts rising up, and this creature walks out. Now, it's got 6 fingers. It's obviously looks like a guy in a mask. It doesn't look realistic or anything, but it's got 6 fingers on each hand. And it's talking about how the Olympic Games have been held for the last 100 years. And it was and it's a testament to humankind. And it does the whole thing where it raises its arm in a Y formation and says, basically, a great human endeavor. And, then the video ends. But it is the creepiest fucking thing you have ever seen. Because, number one, they're flying this. There it is. Somebody just brought the picture up.
It's pretty fucking bizarre.
And
it's really strange.
And look, you should see the video of the fucking spacecraft because it looks realistic. I mean, it's got lights flying around it. And it looks like... It really is hard. I mean, they don't really give a good shot of it, but I don't see any helicopters there. So, but... yeah, it is a strange closing ceremony, and for something like that to happen, number one in Los Angeles, because there was the battle for LA that happened,
right?
And I don't know if I want to say that was 44, maybe. I don't remember what year that happened. Maybe 47. It was, but that was 30 some years ago, almost 40 years ago, probably from these Olympic Games. And could you imagine not knowing it being in downtown Los Angeles and seeing this fucking, the Olympics are going on, but if you're not watching the fucking Olympics, this fucking UFO is flying over the goddamn city, shining lights. There's fucking lasers, and they're doing pew 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 lasers. I mean, it's not like, oh, it's just cute little lasers. No, they're going pew 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 pew. I mean, it looks like they're firing at this thing. These got these damn laser lights. Look like they're firing off, and this weird music's fucking playing, and. I mean, I don't remember this as a kid because I was only been about 7, but I do remember like all the 1984 Olympics because I remember they had a lot of eagle cartoon mascots and stuff like that for it. It's crazy to watch this because I'm just like, that would freak somebody the fuck out, and I don't, War of the Worlds freaked people out, how 70 years ago or whatever it was it was just a radio broadcast. So, I mean, it's odd, dude. I'm really shocked that this happened. And maybe it seemed a lot more harmless at the time. Maybe it looked a lot faker. I mean, we're looking at video that was recorded off a VCR tape and uploaded to YouTube. So, I mean, the quality's shit, But, I mean, The video quality in 84 was shit anyway. So, but it's a really strange thing to see.
We'll have to find a video. I didn't watch the video, but we'll find it and we'll post one on the Facebook on the page. That way people can kind of watch that. I remember The Simpsons did a parody of that, I think. I think The Simpsons did some kind of rip on that.
Simpsons did it first. I was going to say that the last time I was doing some research for the show, you mentioned the War of the Worlds thing.
Battle of LA and the World's... Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember that the Preston Nichols guy, the Peter Moon, the author, had said that it's kind of a phenomenon whenever you have something like that. So War of the Worlds, like the beginning of the broadcast, they stated that this was a radio reenactment of the novel. Like so before any of that happened, they actually stated that this was a reenactment. But as the broadcast kept going on, like so many people would just come in and just kind of tune in at the last minute, or like tune in and they missed that they're just like, holy shit, this is the real deal. So I could see, like, the 1984 Olympics, like somebody who didn't catch the opening ceremony, like you said, people just kind of overlook that, and then paranoia sits in, like, holy shit, it's a giant UFO.
I just posted the closing ceremony video. I mean, they give you like if you just kind of open that up in the very first video that plays after a short ad. I know, but
hopefully it's like a 1984 Burger King commercial.
Just go ahead and just give that a look real fast, because I want to hear your guys' opinion on this. Just kind of open that page up and go to this, because I don't want people to think I'm crazy and say, hey, this thing looks real when it doesn't really look that real.
Oh wow, the UFO is shooting down actual beams. That's fucking creepy. It's a lot of decent showmanship.
Now, see, in this video that I'm seeing, I don't see the helicopters. How visible were they?
You don't see the helicopters. That's
pretty fucking weird.
Hey, you know what's really great about this is just there in that video, he said something about that something about it's a human who's like 7 feet tall.
Yeah, 7 feet 8 inches tall, Gary.
7 feet 8, 6 hands, or 6 fingers on each hand.
You know what? Everybody reports that the Palladians, those tall, sexy, blonde-haired, blue-eyed creatures, are around.
There ain't nothing sexy about this alien, bro.
No, there's nothing sexy about that.
But he could have been a Palladian, and
A Palladian
you never
in
know.
disguise.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard, but we both said there's nothing sexy about that man.
Well, maybe the modern day descriptions of Palladians are wrong, and we got it right back in 1984, just like Ghostbusters.
Maybe you're just into some weird stuff.
You take that back, Preston. You fucking take it back.
I actually really enjoyed the new Ghostbusters movie, so
Yeah, hell yeah, I did too.
if you haven't seen it, listeners, you need to go do yourself a favor and go watch it because it's a pretty good little flick.
Yeah, and if you didn't like it, guess what? That's your opinion, and you're completely entitled to that.
And you can still listen to the show. We'll allow it.
Yeah, everybody's welcome. Everybody is welcome. So, should we just go ahead and jump into the next story you got there, Rob?
Yeah, I came across this story from a 66-year-old man. Alien abduction at Area 51 Army Base. Ex-soldiers reveal secrets from inside joined HQ. So, Bill Brooks, in 1966, he claimed he was subjected to an alien abduction while he served at a nuclear weapons base in Sennlager, Germany. He apparently says he was also a great soldier. All right, by the way, he was up on his vehicle and he felt he was dozing off, as one is supposed to do in protecting a German nuclear base. By the way, when he had awakened to a guy pulling a gun on him and telling him to walk with the rest of the soldiers, and he was walking towards a big bright light. And he came to afterwards, and he had no idea what happened, but he was threatened that if he told anybody about what he had encountered, that they would kill him. But he says he seen that he had another encounter with a UFO returning from a gig because he was a musician. And just 2 hours after that, he got flooded with memories of this encounter. And he said that he was brought into this area with all these other soldiers. They basically did... If you listen to this stuff where they said they did to him, it sounds like to me MK Ultra stuff. He says that he was given a sugar cube, and he was told to take this sugar cube, and it had some kind of drug on it, he thinks. And they set him in this chair, and he had to look at these patterns on the wall, and they were rotating more like, I can't remember what they said, like targets or something. And it basically was just these spinning, he was quickly drawn in by these two spinning objects. So, it always reminds you that when you see spies or whatever get brainwashed or whatever, it almost sounds like that's what he was being reprogrammed, maybe. And he says that he felt like maybe this happened to him because he got in trouble for scrapping with the lads while he was in the military. So I guess they think that maybe that's why he was brought into this. But he apparently he wrote a book about it, and it's coming out soon. It's called 44, based on an ex-soldier's true story of lifelong encounters involving alien abductions. He could probably shorten that down a little bit, but he, he told his story. He said that it started basically when he was 10, that he seen some cattle being pulled up into a ship, and he said he got real scared because they thought these people were going to kill him as well. And he said, "No, you're human. We wouldn't kill you." And then they dumped the cow on the ground. And they basically did some experiments on him, supposedly, and then let him go. He also supposedly had an encounter with the Nordics. And they asked him if he would help that mankind was headed to a disaster and he needed to be there to help. It's the same story we hear over and over. Earth is in trouble. Would he help? What's he going to do?
Called Ghostbusters.
But they supposedly showed him how he could command movements of small spheres with his mind, and taught him how to use propulsion systems that they tried to explain to him. And he said that after getting home, he discovered he had lost a day during the incident, and also his wedding ring had been gone. So, could this be a story that a man made up just to not get in trouble for cheating on his wife? No, totally.
Right.
There was this blonde chick, and they took me up on a ship, and we didn't do nothing. I mean, she stuck a finger up my butt, I think, but
the aliens milked
we
me,
didn't
though.
do nothing.
I didn't like it.
But he also drew some pictures, and supposedly he's got alien insert. It sounds like he's taken everything from every UFO story and put it all together. But and what was this last line? I seen. He says, sometimes I do get angry because I feel I've been used, but sometimes I also wonder where these experiences have been ultimately for good or ill of mankind. I know it has screwed up my life, so I'm more likely to believe the latter. He says also, Brooks also recounts another paranormal experience he had after leaving the army and living in Germany, in which he was shown a foreshadowing of where serial killers Fred and Rosemary West tortured their victims by mysterious wraith-like beings. So, weird fucking story. It almost makes you want to read the book, but it could be just a bunch of horse poppycock.
Man, that's what sucks is, like, today I was looking up a video. It was like an hour-long documentary about the Reed family abductions, and I thought, hey, that's kind of cool. I'll watch this, do a little report on it. And then I swear, like, every time the story started getting good, he'd be like, but we talk about the rest of that in the book, so you're going to have to read the rest of that in the book. But, yeah, I see something in my parents' room, but you'll have to read the book to find out what it was. And so about 10 minutes in, I just thought, the hell with this noise and your book, which I'll probably buy. That's freaking nuts, man. I'm pretty sure he just had a one-night stand with a prostitute and lost his wedding ring.
In his own anus.
Hey, you know, it's when push comes to shove, you just got to blame it on the Nordics. It's all the Nordics' fault.
When it comes to my ass, there's no push versus shove because you ain't push nothing in there.
It's just all shove. It's just all shove.
All right, but that's all I got, man.
Cool. Well, next we're going to shift gears a bit from aliens to ghosts, and Preston and I are going to do a little talk a little bit about the 1886 Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, which has been deemed the quote unquote most haunted hotel in the United States of America.
How many hotels have that moniker? Because I know I've heard that from more than just Eureka Springs. I've heard of the Stanley Hotel.
I think any hotel in like a really old city in the U.S. probably has that moniker. So basically, I guess, Preston, you want to start off because you've been there recently. So what we'll do, guys, is kind of touch a little bit on the history of said hotel and then talk about our both of our experiences there while we were staying at said hotel. So Preston, why don't you get her started?
So I'm going to start off by talking about the history of Eureka Springs, what they call the Grand Old Lady of the Ozarks, a.k.a. the Crescent Crescent Hotel. Now, can any of you guess when the 1886 Crescent Hotel was built?
In 1911?
I think construction probably stopped in 1886.
1886 would be the correct answer.
1474.
Ooh. It was commissioned by the Eureka Springs Investment Company along with the Frisco Railroad. And it was kind of built in the heyday of when, like, you have, like, those salesmen that would come to the doors and, basically, like, the snake oil, like, I have this potion here, and if you rub this on your head every night, you'll grow all your hair back. And so there's this idea that the natural spring waters in that area had all these healing properties. So it was kind of like the gimmick of, we create this really fancy spa up on the majestic top of the mountain that looks over, down into the valley. We have this natural healing springs. We'll come here, spend all your money, and but it was kind of built in the wrong time because nobody foresaw that 15 years after it opened that the Great Depression would hit. So when it first opened, it had all the modern technology of that day. They had Edison lamps all over the place. They had a hydraulic elevator.
Ooh.
And they had over 100 horse stables.
Ah.
And recreation such as dancing, hiking, swimming, and carriage rides. Originally it was open all year, but when the Depression took place, they decided that during the winter months, winter, fall, and spring, they would turn it into a college for young women.
La la.
So it became the Crescent College and Conservatory.
I do like the ladies.
for young women. And it ran like this from 1908 up until 1924. And then it switched hands, went to new owners, and then they kept it as a college from 1929 up until 1933. In a minute, we're going to get to Sean's side of it, but this is where I'd like to point out that on the third floor, during the ghost tour, we were told the story of a group of young ladies that would do things like in the middle of the night. They would sneak out and they would go down to downtown Eureka Springs because the hotel sits on top of this what they call like Brown Mountain or whatever. And so you can look down. It's like just a walking distance to the downtown area, and they would kind of finagle their legs and say, "Ooh la la, boys, come back to the college." And they had this basket set up to where the boys would get into the basket. And the girls would lift the basket up, and then next thing you know, the party would start on the third floor. So the dean at the time, he caught on to this, and so he goes down there right as this boy's getting in, and he throws the boy out of the basket. He jumps in the basket himself, and lo and behold, when the top of the basket reaches the third floor, the girls thought that their, lovely little sex boy was going to be in there, and it turns out it was the dean. And what did they do? They let go, and they dropped him 3 stories, and he broke his leg.
Boom.
Boom. Now, he didn't become a ghost, but there are these tales of this young lady who, in all this debauchery and everything, one of the young ladies, she, kind of was very promiscuous and got around and somehow ended up being pregnant. And they don't say how she died exactly because a lot of the files, when something bad happened at the college, the families wouldn't release the files to the public. So some of this is really just basically what I feel is hearsay. But they say that a girl was pushed from the third story balcony, and there are reports. And this has to be, I swear to God, because I'm a paranormal investigator myself, so I do this thing on the side. And so there's reports that this girl was pushed from the third balcony. And the reason why people say that her ghost is haunting that area is that they caught this photo in the Skyline dining room of a guy at close to the entrance. He was sitting at a table there. He was drinking a beer. And they caught this photo, and right next to the doorway, it looked like there was a ghost. And the ghost had a giant round thing, the shape, where her belly would be. So what did the tour guide try to tell us?
She was pregnant.
It's a baby.
It's a baby! I'm here to tell you folks that it was a white fucking blob with another fucking blob down below. Like, I didn't see a ghost, I didn't see a baby, and I believe in this shit. I've caught some stuff, and I didn't buy into it. Anyways, so that's how that ghost got to that hotel, and that's how it was haunting it. Now, there are reports that there's a ghost that you can see on the third floor that he's seen wearing like a top hat, and they don't really know who this ghost is, but it's theorized that the man in the hat was Colonel Mustard, and he indeed did, push the girl off the third story balcony, and that's how the murder was solved. Other ghosts on the third.
Did you just do a clue joke?
Very bad clue joke. I sure did. You bet your bottom dollar. Now, the other ghosts on the third floor, I think it's like room 312, 313. It used to be like a closet, but it is said that if a young couple stays in that room and they get into fights, she will take all their baggage or luggage in the middle of the night and throw it into the hallway, or pick it up and slam it into the door, because she doesn't like young couples who argue.
Did you guys argue while you were there?
No, we didn't argue at all. And actually, we stayed on the second floor. Now, while this was being built, the second floor was still open, and a young Irishman, a stonemason by the name of Michael, fell to his death, and he hit a girder on the second story, And it is said that while you're at the hotel at midnight, if you listen carefully, you will hear a loud crash on the second floor, and that's the boom, and that's the reenactment of Michael's death. Now, we stayed up to about midnight, and I'm here to tell you folks, I did not hear a loud crash, but I theorize, and this is my take on it, that because the piping and the plumbing is so old, that somebody on the third floor, if they just so happen to take a massive shit and were to flush it, that poop going down the piping would make that loud bang noise, and I think that's what it is. But later on in the story, when we get back to my tales of what happened, I think I did encounter Michael in my stay, but now I think it's time for Sean to take over what happened in what we call the Norman Baker era, which took place in 1937.
Okay, so first I'll say real quick, well, Shayla and I were there. Unfortunately, Michael's room was under a renovation, so during our tour, we got to go up there and take a look at it, but I think they were painting and replacing some of the walls, so we couldn't even go in and look at it, so that was kind of a buzzkill. We were really hoping to get up there and actually take a look at the room and maybe see the sights, but didn't get a chance to catch any of the old Irishmen, unfortunately. So. Oh,
and I forgot real quick. It is said that Michael likes to fraternize with the ladies. So if you're staying in room 218 and you're in the bathroom taking a shower, when the ladies get out of the shower, they say that they can see his reflection in the mirror.
I heard that, and I also heard, too, that oftentimes they will come out of the shower only to find out that their bath towel has been moved to where they can't reach it from the shower.
When you go to this hotel, can you specifically ask for those rooms, or are they usually booked up solid?
You have to pre-book. You have to call ahead and request, like, hey, when's the next day Michael's room is open, and then they will tell you. So, okay, so we're going to get back into, Preston said the 1930s. We've got this young man by the name of Norman G. Baker. A little backstory on Mr. Baker. Buckle up, guys. It's going to take just a minute, but it's all a part of the what leads up to his ultimate scheme. Norman Baker was born on November 27th in 1882 in Muscatine, Iowa. He was the youngest of 10 children. In 1898, at the age of 16, Norman quit high school to take a job as a machinist. For a few years, he travels from town to town, working as a die and tool maker wherever he could find work at. Then, one night, Norman saw a mental suggestion magic show by a performer named Professor Flint. Norman was captivated by Professor Flint's abilities and
I thought it was Professor Plum. I'm so confused.
He was pretty captivated by Mr. Flint's abilities and resolved to start a similar show of his own. After a couple bad starts, Norman got his performance troupe, I think it was a trio maybe, started in 1904. The star of his show was a young lady by the name of Madame Pearl Tangley. The show was a hit, and they found a lot of audiences on the vaudeville circuit. According to his autobiography, the show drew like 300 people a week. It was quite the show in its time. In 1909, the original Madame Tangley decided to quit the troupe, and then she was replaced by a college girl named Teresa Pender. A year later, Norman and Teresa got married. Ooh. The show continued for about another 4 years until the summer of 1914, where Mr. and Mrs. Baker found themselves in Muscatine again for a long break from the show. While there, they intended to go back out on the road again in the fall, but fate intervened. See, Norman's dad was a pretty successful inventor. I think he came up with like some 126 inventions in his time. And like I said earlier, Norman was kind of a machinist. He was a tinkerer. He liked to make a lot of really cool and intricate items and inventions of his own. So while tinkering one day in his brother's machine shop, he came up with an innovation for a new kind of organ called the calliophone. The calliophone was played with air instead of steam, making it much more efficient to play, much more efficient to make, and basically a lot cheaper all in all. He sold the first calliophone for $500. In today's time, that's right around 10 grand, so he made quite the sale. He made 2 more and sold them immediately. Suddenly, the amusement business from vaudeville didn't seem so attractive anymore, and he moved on to manufacture these new calliophone and sell them to a lot of different circuits, carnivals, amusement parks, that kind of thing, and made him a pretty wealthy guy. If you guys haven't heard of calliophone, I actually happen to have one with me right here in my hand, so let me see if I can get this puppy started up, and I'll let you know what it sounds like here. It's pretty much the stereotypical carnival sound. So in 1915 was a year of a big change for Baker. So after he quit the theater business, he also divorced his wife. So, been there, done that. And he jumped full-time into manufacturing. In its height, his business made, I think, about $200,000 in 1 year. And that's a boatload of money back then. It's a boatload of money now. So just imagine back then how much money that would have been. In 1920, he opened up an art school. And he had openly admitted that he didn't draw himself. He couldn't draw. He wasn't very artistic, but somehow managed to scam people into teaching people how to draw. And it made him another $75,000 within 3 years of being open, teaching people how to do art.
Wait, so was he the one that used to send out the pictures of the turtle and the pirate? I'm so confused.
I love you so much, Rob. You're the best.
Want to learn how to draw a pirate or a turtle? Call Norman Baker. He'll teach you how.
Do you think you can do art? Then draw this old turtle and this old man. If we think you're good enough, then we won't shatter your dreams and we'll let you be an artist.
And that's how Bob Ross got his start.
Bob Ross. Right around 1924, 1925, he went back to the Muscatine Chamber of Commerce under the guise of civic duty, and he offered to build a radio station in Muscatine, saying that it would basically put that little town on the map and make them one of the most famous Midwest towns in the United States. He said all he wanted in return for, letting them build him a radio station is that they give him free electricity, free water, and don't charge him any taxes. So, sounds to me like a pretty sweet gig. So he opened up a radio station and he called it KTNT. He chose it because it had a very explosive sound, and also it stood for what he called Know the Naked Truth. And if you guessed that the opening sign-on for his radio station was the Calliophone, you probably guessed right. Since he used to be a carnival barker and used to run around, at amusement parks and the like, he became a very exquisite radio promoter and announcer. He also had a streak of trouble, I should say, and he immediately began to agitate a lot of local radio stations and what he calls the cartel of broadcasters, and basically got on target and had a lot of scrutiny. Throughout his career, Baker was involved in a lot of litigations of various kinds. Libel suits were brought up against him, whether it be for his real or imagined stories. He used this station to launch blistering attacks on innumerable commercial, media, and political groups, and also doing that locally and nationwide. So he also operated as a kind of traveling soapbox for a lot of people. He was quite popular with the locals, and a lot of people hired him to come out, bringing his traveling campaign bus equipped with the Calliophone, and spoke for a lot of different movements. The biggest examples right now is when he would bring his little soapbox out. He would basically talk against mandated cattle TB tests, water fluoridation, vaccinations, and also aluminum cookware. He quoted that all those things, including aluminum cookware, were causing half of all cancers that were being discovered right around that time. And cancer, of course, is going to rear its ugly head here in a little bit. So enter hospital number 1. After learning of an alleged cancer cure by the doctor named Charles Azias in Kansas City, despite reading that it killed all 5 of its initial test subjects, Baker decided, hey, I should probably start selling some cancer cures, and called up local, I guess you'd call him fraud. His name was Harry Huxley, and he was a medical swindler as well. In April of 1930, Norman Baker was operating the Baker Institute in Muscatine and advertised the clinic on his radio station. So you can kind of see this vicious circle going around and around and around, basically just promoting himself. He offered cancer cures and other serious disease cures, which were also very expensive. The weird thing about a lot of his cures, especially for cancer, is a lot of them revolved around injections. So we're going to talk about the injections for his cure for cancer. Basically were concoctions made of corn silk, watermelon seeds, clover, water, and carbolic acid. So he would mix this little concoction up in various forms and inject this into his patients, claiming that in itself, the enzymes would cure cancer. Mr. Harry Hoxley also had a treatment of his own, which included making topical pastes made of zinc, bloodroot, arsenic, sulfur, and talc powder, and that's what he would make a little cream and apply that to external areas. Or he'd make a liquid of tonic with licorice, red clover, burdock root, stellingia root, barberry, cascara, prickly ash bark, buckhorn bark, and potassium iodide for internal consumption. Now, if all that didn't sound bad enough, it had some pretty wicked side effects. The topical paste was very caustic and can burn and scar the skin. The oral treatments for internal problems caused pretty much everything Pepto-Bismol cures: nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, anxiety, trembling, abdominal cracks, and even abdominal cracks. You would split wide open and bleed everywhere. No, abdominal cramps and also heart block. Pokeweed, which he used once in a while, would cause severe cases of death in children, and red clover also increases the risk of bleeding for people who take anticoagulants. It also mimics the behavior of the hormone estrogen, so it was unsuitable for anybody who was being treated for estrogen-responsive breast tumors. So basically, this shit sounded pretty nasty and probably didn't cure your cancer. So simultaneously, KTNT denounced licensed doctors as educated fools and cutters, incapable of helping patients. The only way to cure cancer was to use his treatments. He said that MD actually stood for more dough, meaning that basically doctors were wasting your time just trying to scheme you for money, which is a bit ironic. At the same time, the Journal of American Medical Association, known as the JAMA, published an editorial accusing Baker of quackery. Baker turned around and denounced the AMA as saying, no, AMA stands for Amateur Meat Cutters Association.
What the fuck? This dude sounds like a child.
Nanny boo-boo. The AMA came back with Dr. Morris Fishburne, the anti-quackist, so to speak, and he stated...
Is that Lawrence Fishburne's grandfather?
I hope so. Dr. Morris Fishburne stated that Baker has even claimed that the AMA offered him $1 million for his cancer cure with the intent of forcing it from the market so that patients might be compelled to resort to surgery instead of taking his miracle cure. In turn, Baker attacked Dr. Fishbein for being Jewish and sued the JAMA for libel and defamation. So
I was going to say on the Ghost Tour, they actually said that Baker was a Nazi sympathizer and also a KKK sympathizer as well.
Well, all in all, not a nice guy. So, in 1930, Baker reported publicly that 3 men came to his practice and attacked the hospital by firing gunshots. The police came, did an investigation, and discovered that there was no evidence of any men, except for the fact that they could prove that his friend Hoxley actually was the one that fired the bullets into the hospital. In May 1930, the state of Iowa filed for an injunction against Baker and Hoxley and 3 others for practicing medicine without a license. One last hurrah in Muscatine, Baker conducted basically like a snake oil Woodstock, and it, I think, drew in somewhere around like 10,000 people who were ailing from various forms of cancer and other diseases, to which he would sell his snake oil and give his injections to all of them, trying to cure all their diseases. In September of 1930, there was a trial against Baker. It gained nationwide attention. Simultaneously, Baker was called before the Federal Radio Commission in Washington, D.C. to defend KTNT's license. Baker and Hoxley, during the trial, turned on each other over the division of the profits from the hospital and filed several lawsuits against each other. It's reported that the Institute brought in as much as $100,000 a month from all these poor people that they were just taking for a ride. The money, however, was soon spirited away in suitcases under the cover of night, but most of the money went to Baker. Hoxley was already nationally known as a quack, traveling from state to state as he was being pursued by the police. 1931 finds the Iowa Supreme Court filing an injunction against Baker and his practice, and then the FRC issued a damning report about KTNT. After a court battle, the station was finally delicensed in June of 1931, so old boy Baker lost his radio station. So after all that, he was sent into an exile in Mexico. While he was in Mexico, he opened up another radio station in 1933 called XENT AM in Nuevo...
Well, he really liked that TNT, didn't he?
I guess, man. Explosive. He opened up his radio station in Nuevo Laredo in Rio Grande. The station was called the Border Blaster and operating nightly on a huge amount of kilowatts. Outside the reach of the new US FCC, this reportedly made XENT the most, or rather the second most powerful station in North America. The station's chief objective was to promote Baker's alleged cancer cures in Mexico. The Baker Hospital was opened up in Nuevo Laredo, drawing in a new ire of AMA accusations and local doctors' complaints. Nightly XENT broadcasts were eclectic mixes of lowbrow humor, hillbilly-style rock and roll. Usually some Baker tirades were included as well. His targets were mostly anti-Semitic and anti-Catholic, and he also was known to broadcast live while having sex with his mistress on the air.
Wow.
Yeah, he was quite the guy. He returned to Muscatine in 1973 to spend one day in county jail and pay a huge fee of $50 in contempt of court. So he basically spent one day in jail and paid $50, and that was all he had to pay. So let's get back on track, folks. We're going to go back to the 1886 Crescent Hotel. Like Preston said, in 1937, the town of Eureka Springs was known as a spa resort town, and old Baker just kind of walked up and realized, holy crap, here's another scheme. This town's down on its luck. I bet I could probably put this puppy on the map. Instead of building a radio station, he decided, what the hell, maybe I should build the third hospital and continue to cure cancer, because that's what I was put on this earth to do. So he bought the resort, the Crescent Hotel, which had previously been the haven for the rich, the school to the ladies, and that had fallen into despair due to the Depression. He leased the hospital and changed the name from the Crescent to Baker's Cancer Curing Hospital. His slogan on one postcard said, "Where the sick folks get well, Baker Hospital. We cure cancer, tumors without operations, radiation, or x-rays. We treat all patients. We do not cut out any organs."
Unless you're a Jew.
Pretty much. Every room is...
You gotta use the voice. Use the voice.
Every room has a connecting bathroom. So that was the seller right there. He basically ran around the town and spread rumors of the cure far and wide, and desperate dying people flocked to Eureka Springs. That's what's really freaking sad. A lot of the people that came ended up dying. One unlucky patient was a woman by the name of Lula Tunis. When Lula and her husband John arrived at the hospital, they were met by a very charismatic Norman Baker. Because remember the guy was, a carny. He was a salesman. He was a spokesman. So the guy, I'm sure...
He was your D&D character. He was a fucking charlatan.
Oh my god, I've been playing Norman Baker the whole time. C'est la vie. So he was very charismatic, and he had a really good way of just reeling people in, unfortunately. Other doctors had told the desperate couple there was nothing they could do to cure Lula's cancer, that she was simply dying. So they sought out Dr. Baker's castle in the air, as he called it, in search of his miracle treatment. And they called that Lula's last hope. Dr. Baker assured them that his treatment would be the cure that they were seeking. He had a 100% success rate, and he was waging a self-described war against the American Medical Association, and pushed his alternative medicine to every patient he could find. He even claimed that the AMA offered him $1 million for his cancer cure to keep it off the shelves and force patients to seek surgery and other treatments to Lula and her husband. Believing that he was leaving his wife for the best care possible, John left Lula in Eureka Springs. Unfortunately, things got a little bit worse. John's testimony included the quote that she took the needle treatments. She told me that they were awful. 5 to 7 needles a day were stuck into her. They would hold them there until all the medicine ran out into her body. She said it didn't do much good. She said that she wanted to go home, that she was getting worse. She was just in terrible shape, and when she left the Baker Institute and went down to bed right away. Unfortunately, after all the quack treatments, Lula returned home, and by Christmas that year, she had died. So, no dice, unfortunately. Lula was actually one of the lucky ones. It says at least she was able to go home and see her family one last time. A lot of patients would die, from Baker's injections, and it's often wondered how he lasted so long and how all the patients didn't just, get up and leave or just have some kind of mutiny. A lot of times they would say, "Hey, where did so-and-so go? She was here yesterday," and he would pop up and say, I got good news, folks. After last night, she woke up this morning just fit as a fiddle, and we checked her out, and she's back home with her family. Nothing to be worried at. Unfortunately, what would really happen is patients would die overnight, and then Baker and his staff would whisk their bodies away in the dead of night and incinerate them at a later time. The living patients never saw this happen. It was actually a pretty sad deal. Preston, what did you find out about that?
You can actually fit. So when they converted the hotel or into the hospital, they used the back of the kitchen. There was a cold storage, like a basically like a meat locker, and that's what they called it. They called it the meat locker. You can actually store 78 bodies if you stack them right from ceiling from the floor to the ceiling. You can get 78 bodies in there if you stack them right. So you remember how you said that he said they never cut on anybody. They never cut anything out.
Right.
When they went to go actually raid the hospital later on, when they got down to the meat locker, the actual what they call the morgue, they found a room that had nothing but jars of formaldehyde that had like different tumors from different areas of the body that they had actually cut off the dead patients before they put them in the meat locker.
Oh, geez.
And the third floor was actually called the pain ward because you could hear screams and moans coming from it all night long. And so when they converted it back to a hotel, there's this story of this couple who goes there every year. They celebrate their honeymoon in the annex suite. So they added when it was a college, they had to end up adding a room on for the servants. So you would have like your butlers or your maids that would come with these families. They didn't have room for them because they didn't think that all these affluential families would like bring their servants with them, and so they had to add on these rooms. Well, when they later down the road, like back in the 80s or 2000s, they converted those rooms into suites, like honeymoon suites. So I think this one's like 3005. They give the 2005, 3005, and 4005 depending on what floor you stay on. So they were on the pain ward, and they've been renting this room every year on their anniversary for the last 20 years. And so one year she puts on a sexy red nightgown, and her husband's like snapping some photos like ooh la la. And when they get back home and they develop the photos, they noticed that in the TV there's this white image on this black TV screen. Basically the TV wasn't on, but it looked like there was a reflection, an upside down reflection in this TV screen. And when they looked at it, and they flipped the picture over, it looked like a girl in a nightgown, and her face looked deformed. And there were several files of patients on that floor that some of them were females that actually had tumors on their face. So they were never actually able to pinpoint exactly which patient it was, but basically, the story that the ghost tour lady tried to present was the fact that this young lady died a horrible death because they would inject this concoction directly into the tumor on her face. She would writhe in pain on a nightly basis till she finally just passed, and now she haunts the hotel in room 3005.
Hot damn. I have a quick question. Does everybody in your fantasy world just say ooh la la?
Yeah, why not? Everything's possible when you have imagination.
Yeah, that's what you're gonna call it. So yeah, we talked. You talked about how they would inject that crap right into her face, and he also claimed that he never did any cutting on people. It was all basically just injections, and he had the miracle cure. That's not quite true. There were reports that basically, if somebody had any kind of brain cancer, what he would do is shuffle them down to the basement, like we talked about with the meat locker. And it says here, for patients that suffered from brain tumors, they were wheeled down to the basement where their skulls were opened up and Baker's concoction made into a paste would be smeared on their brain. Patients continued to die and their bodies disappeared, but this would not thwart Baker. He hired more staff, collected more money, and became more paranoid of the AMA. Some patients even claim they hid machine guns in the walls to protect them from his enemies, quote unquote. So, pretty crazy shit. So yeah, basically a lot of weird experiments were going on in the basement. He was killing a lot of people, doing who knows what, stacking apparently 78 bodies in the cooler where he played, cadaver Jenga, which, I've never played, but it sounds like it's a pretty gross game. In the end, basically after all this crap went down, the AMA and law enforcement just couldn't find a way to pin anything on him indefinitely and get him in trouble. But what he finally went down for actually were 7 counts of mail fraud, where he would mail out different postcards and brochures claiming one thing and then not delivering. So in actuality, after he killed all these people, they couldn't really prove all the murders, but they ended up arresting him for 7 counts of mail fraud, and he basically got found guilty for all 7 accounts. He then, I think, got sent to Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary to serve a 4-year sentence. One investigator writes that our investigation indicates that Baker and his associates defrauded cancer sufferers out of approximately $4 million. And again, we're talking about, 1930s, 1940s? Mm-hmm. That's a boatload of money. It's a ridiculous amount of money.
And the tour guy said that he paid $1,000 under the table to the judge, and only served a year in prison before being released, and then spent the rest of his days in Florida.
A final statement from Norman says, from a warden that took care of him, says, "I'm not guilty. They have never proved anything in the indictment. We figure this was a railroading proposition. It is my opinion that the jury was fixed and influenced. We have hired private detectives to look into the matter. It is believed that whiskey and women were just made available to the jurors. We were railroaded across the American Medical Association, who have been after me for years." Yeah, like you said, he was released in 1944. He retired in Florida, and he died comfortably. He lived comfortably. Hopefully he didn't die comfortably in 1958. So, Preston, why don't you get us back to modern day times?
So, then after that, in 1946, it was restored back into a hotel and was renovated. He had actually had like this weird fascination from his time down in Mexico with like that really bright, like like when you go to those cantinas here in like Wichita. I don't know if Rob has them in his area or not, but they have like the tables that have like Aztec jungle themes on them, and they're like really campy, bright colors. He actually redecorated the hotel when he took it over, and so when they turned it back after he got arrested and they became a hotel again, they had to do some renovation, and it lasted all the way until 1967 when a fire mysteriously destroyed the penthouse, and then it just kind of stayed vacant up until like 1980 when a couple bought it, and they do professional restorations of historical buildings, and so they restored it to its former glory, and since then it's been this hotel spa resort that you can go to and relaxing for the weekend. And they do ghost tours, which for an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes, however long it is, it's like $20 a person, and you get to learn about the history, a lot of what we just told you, along with some of the ghosts that roam the halls. I think one of the coolest things that happened in my ghost tour was, since we were the last ones, I learned a little bit of history that I didn't know. The Breckenridge family, they sent their daughter to the hotel when it was a college, and she had a young son there. Brecky was the nickname, and he died from appendicitis when he was 5, and he's one of the ghosts on the second floor that play tricks on people, along with Michael. And after his death, she decided that she was going to explore the world, explore all the world's different birthing techniques. And the way that we deliver babies in the modern era is due to the death of her son and what she went through, and the fact that after she left that college, her family spent a boatload of money for her to travel the world, so that she could combine all these different techniques from different areas of Asia, China, Russia, all these different areas of the world, she combined them into one standardized form that everybody uses now. So I thought that history was kind of cool. What do you want me to talk about next? Did you want to go over like your ghost tour and what happened with you, and then get back to me, or do you want me to just continue rambling on?
Tell us about yours first, like your ghost tour. Do you have anything specific you wanted to say about it?
It was campy. Like I said, I don't want to claim to be a know-it-all when it comes to the paranormal, but because I've been doing this for a while, like when they were talking about the third floor, about the little girl who had died, she was there visiting for a weekend, and she fell off the railing from the top of the third floor and landed and had died a very unpleasant death. So they bring out the EMF meters, and she puts it against the wall, and there's an electrical paneling in the wall, so of course the EMF meter goes off. Then she puts it against the rail, and it doesn't do anything. And then she'll kind of wave it in front of you, and she's like, I don't know. It might be an active night. And then all of a sudden it starts going off. And then she's like, oh, everybody get out your phones. Take pictures. Get your cameras out. And so then everybody leans in with their phones. And your fucking phones give off EMF frequencies. So if you have an EMF meter, and you have your fucking cell phone out, it's going to go off. So when the thing lights up and she's like, oh, it's going to be an active night. In the middle of the tour, I turn to Jeffrey and I say, it's because of the fucking cell phones. And the rest of the tour kind of went downhill because I'm just like, it's very campy, very cheesy, and I think that a lot of people just kind of get caught up in it. So, there was a lot of young teenagers there, and they're like, oh my god, that's a picture of a ghost. That's a real ghost right there. And then I'm like, it's just a fucking blob on the photo. That's not a ghost. But, so we stayed on the second floor. We actually stayed in room 210, so we were down the hall from Michael. And like I said, we stayed up till midnight. We didn't hear a loud crash into the girder. But, Jeffrey... when she's not at work, her phone is not on silent, and when we woke up the next day, the phone was. She had to take it off from silent, and she's like, in the middle of the night, was the phone bothering you? Did you touch it? Did you put it on silent? And I'm like, no, I didn't touch your phone. And we had both gone down to the Skyward Bar in order to drink before going back up to the room. We'd both basically drank the same amount, and the next morning on her side of the bed where the end table was, the ice had melted and filled her glass back up, and mine was basically bone dry. There was maybe like a little slither left in the bottom of the glass, and we both were kind of mesmerized, like, wait a minute, when did you drink all that? I'm like, I didn't drink all that. She's like, I was pretty sure that we drank the same amount. She's like, I'm starting to think you're kind of an alcoholic, honey. And I'm like, what? We drank the same amount. Like, I don't know why mine's so empty. So I'm going with Michael broke into my room, and because he's an Irishman, he has a thirst. He looked at my blue drink and decided to take a swig, and little Brecky decided to mess with the phone, and that's my paranormal experience, and we're going with it.
Huh.
Or I could have just woke up in the middle of the night and not realized it and took a big old giant swig and went back to bed. I think the ghost is a better angle, so that's what we're going with.
Well, so when we were there, we took a ghost tour, and we got kind of lucky. We didn't have the kind of unfortunate... turnout like you did. We got really lucky. I think we went on a ghost tour like... I think it was like a Sunday night, if I remember right. And there was nobody there. I think it was Shayla and myself and 3 other people, and they were a pretty cool group. I think it was a husband and a wife, and maybe one of their sisters were there, so they were all probably like 60, 65-year-olds. Really cool, really fun, really hip. But we got up there, and did you guys have like a little play they were supposed to put on before?
No, when we got up there, we were in a room that had like one of those really old, like, cool pipe organs, and the lady was just telling us the history. And she was dressed. She had like one of those dresses that they would have, like the cam girls would have wore from like the 20s, mm-hmm. And then she had that weird headband, and she just looked really cheesy. And she told us the history, kept calling Norman like a swindler. And I remember making the joke. I turned to Jeffrey. I'm like, you know why this hotel's haunted? Like, when they give this tour, they keep calling people like assholes and swindlers. Like, the ghosts are upset. That's why they're coming back. But yeah, that was ours. So
Well, we were told there was a bit of like a play you could watch beforehand, but this is what's cool about ours. This was really cool. We get up there, and there's just, like I say, Shayla and myself and these 3 other people. And the woman comes in, and she's wearing like the period piece dress, and she's got her hair done up and stuff like that. And she walks in, and she starts to play the part. She's like, "Well, hello, good tidings, blah blah blah." And then, like probably 2 minutes into her shtick, she stops and she's like, "Guys, it's late. There's 5 of you. Do I have to do this?" And we're like, "No, not at all. Please don't, in fact, because it's kind of campy." And then we went on to find out that as she's taking her hair down and kind of, getting comfortable, she ends up saying that she's a local history teacher, and then she works at the Crescent part-time because she loves the history, and she's one of the tour guides. And she's like, "You know what, guys, this is just 5 of you, and you're the last tour of the night. We're just going to spend as much time as we want taking as much pictures, and I'm going to give you guys, like, an in-depth history of the actual hotel." So, like you had said, the little girl, right? This little girl that fell from the 3rd story. Inside there's a staircase, and it's a spiral staircase, but it's kind of a square staircase that leads up. And like Preston said, a little girl fell from the top and landed on the very bottom, and she died. At the bottom of that staircase now is actually the entryway into the spa. There's a really nice modernized spa in the bottom of the Crescent. Otherwise, the rest of the hotel is pretty well got that feeling of an old-timey hotel, whereas you go into the spa and you're like, did I just walk through a freaking time warp? But we get the EMF detectors, and I do the same thing you do. I'm like, well, you know what, like cell phones, you guys have put electrical outlets everywhere, lamps, blah, blah, blah. So I start doing the usual, like, hey, guys, you put it by the plug-in, it comes on. You take it away from the plug-in, it doesn't come on. You kind of go like this, this, and this. But if you cut it over here, you come over here, and you put it against this wooden, stair post, it shouldn't light up. And so I give it to the lady, and she holds it up, and she's like, yeah, you're right, it's wood. I said, yes, no electricity versus electricity. And I was like, so our problem today is going to be anything electrical, cell phones are going to cause these things to go off. And I'm not trying to be, negative Nancy, but I'm just trying to give you guys the facts. Don't get too excited. And then the lady, the tour guide's like, I'm just telling you, there's a ghost of a little girl in here. And I'm like, okay, sure there is. That's fine, thanks. And then as I'm walking around with the EMF detector, I'm around somewhere that has no obvious wires they should be anywhere near. And sure as shit, the EMF detector comes on. And I was like, holy crap, is it her? And she's like, I mean, it might be. And so I'm like, okay, sure, whatever, that's campy, it's got to be a trick. And so we walk down to the bottom of the stairs where the girl supposedly fell. And there's obvious lamps everywhere and plug-ins, so we kind of rule those out. And my wife's like, kids and animals love Sean. They love him to death. He's just got an energy, and they just love him. So maybe we'll get lucky, and maybe she'll go to find Sean. And so one of the older people has the thing, and they're walking around, and nothing's going on. They keep handing it to person to person to person. Shayla takes it, nothing happens. And they give it to me, and as soon as they give it to me, I put it about waist level, and it's like, whew, 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 going off and stuff like that. So I'm like, okay, quick.
Your dick's a ghost.
Ghost dick. So I give it to one of the people that was with us, and they stand where I'm standing, and it doesn't go on. I take it back from him, and I go back, stand there, and it comes on. So either it was remote controlled, or, maybe we were getting some activity. So what was funny is we could be walking around, and someone was like, oh, I kind of feel cold. And then they'd have the EMF detector and nothing would come on. They'd hand me the EMF detector, and sure as shit, after a few seconds, it would light up. And I'd kind of move it from one side of me, and it would go off. And then a few minutes later, like somebody's walking around me, it'd come back on. So we thought that was kind of cool. It could have been very much a controlled, gimmick, but we always thought that was kind of cool that anytime I had it, about waist level, it would come on, and it just kind of followed me throughout the area. Down in the meat locker, we watched a little video, and in the meat locker as well, we got to go inside, and she shuts the door. We got to ask some questions and use the EMF detector, and it only really lit up for me. That was kind of interesting to me, is it only lit up for me. So I thought
down in the meat locker they did that. The video they show you is when the Ghost Hunters crew was doing their investigation. And there's a metal locker that when the Ghost Hunter crew was there, they had their thermal camera on it, and you see this a reflection of a man, and then there's a 2 spray painted on the locker. When they go back and review the footage, the 2 is lit up. It's like it's kind of a red coloring, so red is detecting heat. So orange is mid-level, yellow is kind of like sometimes like your hair as the heat's escaping will be yellow. Red's obviously the hottest, and then like purples and blues are getting cold. Green is kind of neutral. So you see this reflection of the man. The man's coming across as green, but there's this bright fucking red 2 there, and they couldn't figure out like why the 2 was like lit up. And then in that particular room, they have the black lights, the UV lights, and so that 2 is picking up the heat from the lights. Therefore, it's going to come back red because it's reflecting the heat. But what's interesting is the reflection of the human being that they found was green, and when the ghost crew did it again, they couldn't get their reflection. Like maybe the guy that was holding it was standing in front of it. And it was just picking up his reflection. They tried the experiment again and again, and they couldn't get their reflection to show back up. So they actually caught something that was neutral. It wasn't cold, it wasn't hot. It was just visible in the neutral spectrum. So I thought that was the strongest case for evidence out of on the ghost tour, out of all the photos that they show you. I mean, the photos are just campy and shit, but this one little piece of evidence from the Ghost Hunters crew I thought was the best evidence that they actually could have caught a ghost there.
Huh, so. Interesting. We had actually the one thing that scared the living shit out of us happened in the meat locker. So the 5 of us are in there, and the tour guide's like, all right, guys, I'm going to leave you guys in here with the EMF detector. I'll be right back. And so she kind of like trotted off, shut the door. And she's like, while I'm gone, just take the EMF detector, kind of move it around, see if you can find anything, have Sean hold it, and definitely take your camera phones out and take some photos, take some flash photography while you guys are in here. So we're all 5 in there kind of awkwardly standing, like nobody really wants to do it because they don't want to get embarrassed. So slowly we start taking photos here and there in the EMF detector, and then someone's like, oh shit, I think I saw somebody. And we're like, all right, cool, yeah, this girl's totally setting us up. Go ahead, take a photo over there on that wall. Lady pulls out her phone, she snaps a photo, and there's a fucking guy standing there. The flash goes off, we see the guy, and we're all like, ah, ah, ah. So someone turns their flashlight on, and it was a poster of, I believe it was Norman Baker, they had put inside the meat locker. But when the camera went off out of the corner of your eye, all you saw is this life-size guy's like torso and head staring at you, and we screamed, and the lady came running back. She's like, what's going on? And we're like, we took a picture of Norman. And she's like, oh, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard. But yeah, nothing else really happened to us. We stayed in I think we stayed in a room on the second floor as well, off in the corner. Nothing crazy happened. No footsteps, no running water, no stuff was moved around. We didn't have any booze with us. We also heard that one of the ghost of the little kids likes to hide wedding rings. So people report their wedding rings. They put them on the nightstand. The next thing you know, they're like on the fireplace or in the bathroom, stuff like that. And nothing like that ever happened to us either. So I'd like to say that it was a fun trip, but ours was a bit of a bust too. Other than a little bit of EMF action, nothing really happened that was noteworthy. Well, guys, let's wrap up the show then, and I think I'm going to make an executive decision. A lot of people have come and said, you guys' shows are pretty fun, but damn it, we want to hear about aliens. We want to hear some gut's not the right word. We want to hear some spine-tingling, blood-chilling stories of aliens. So I say next time, guys, we just come full force with some alien stories.
That's good, because I have my Preston Nichols is coming back with his tale of the Palladians and all the weird, unspeakable things that happened to him as a child and what he learned from the Palladians. So I will come full force with tales of racist Palladians.
There we go. I've got some good stuff I've been saving. Rob, what do you think? Aliens?
I think I do aliens about every week. I think I'm the only one that does aliens every week.
That's true.
No, Rob, you do aliens and robots. We need you to bring robot aliens to the table.
Yes, if you could just do that for us. Well, cool, man. We'll do an alien show next time and just fucking bring all the big guns with us. So, all right, Preston, you got anything you want to plug?
No, just as always, just rate and review us on iTunes. That helps get the show out there. Follow us on Facebook. We try to do little teaser videos if I get around to doing them. So pay attention to the Facebook for that, because I think they're kind of cool when we get them up. And that's all I got for as far as plugs go. So
cool. I want to plug one thing real quick. I'm trying to plug like TV shows and books and stuff that relate to paranormal. And right now, my wife and I are watching Penny Dreadful. And if nobody's watched that, it might be worth picking up. Kind of a cool turn-of-the-century piece about, I guess you'd say, maybe like Van Helsing-esque topics tropics and monsters. So it's worth a shot. If you guys are looking for a new TV show on Netflix, you've already watched Stranger Things, hopefully a couple times, maybe pick up Penny Dreadful. It's pretty awesome. Rob, you got anything?
I just want to go over our podcasts. There's the Sports Car Unleashed podcast with Rich and his crew. He's not really part of that. Isn't really part of Pixelated Sausage, but I like to plug it. But also we have Pixelated Radio with me, Mark, Corey, and Rich, and we do that every 2 weeks on Sunday usually. We didn't have a show 2 weeks ago, or the last Sunday. We didn't have anybody talk about it. Everybody else was out of town, so we didn't do one, but we should be back this Sunday. And we started a D&D game.
Boy, did we.
So you guys can actually watch that on Wednesday nights on Twitch TV. Every other Wednesday. We'll be doing it this Wednesday from 10 to midnight. And then if you miss it and you want to watch it, you can. I'll usually have it uploaded on YouTube like the next day or that evening or something. And I have to say, I watched part of it and I found this all pretty entertaining.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to switch it up a bit. We're going to have an outro now with our email and our phone number. So if you want to contact us and leave us a story, please do. We definitely would like to get some more listener stories if you want. Pay attention after the show. We'll have the instructions on how to reach us there. But for now, guys, thanks for joining us, and tune in next time.
The cast at Pixelated Paranormal would like to thank you for listening to this week's episode. Pixelated Paranormal is here to tell you tales of the fantastical, the strange, the unknown. Tales that will move you a little further down the paranormal highway. If you'd like to share your own listener story, we would love to hear it. You have two ways. One, email us at pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. Again, that's pixelatedparanormal@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, we have that set up too. Dial us at 707-523-4263. Again, that's 707-523-4263. We'd really love to hear from you. Again, thanks for listening to this week's episode of Pixelated Paranormal, your guide to the unusual and the strange.
Sinlager. We're going to cut all that out, right?
Use your words.
No, we're leaving it in.
Yeah, that's good. I like that.